Hey there, David.
Hello, Adam.
I'm glad to see you on the ground. You tend to be flying around in the air in Medellin, in Colombia, where you're based right now. We gotta start with the story. I talked to you last week, and you invented a new way of commuting from a mountaintop to your girlfriend's house. Would you mind sharing this story? Because it's definitely a bold choice.
Sure. Well, I'd been flying and I'd landed back on top of the mountain and I was heading down the
Flying
steps.
what? Just so I know the
Oh,
story. They don't.
sorry, a paraglider.
Paraglider.
Yeah,
That-
so I'm here in Medellin. I got my paraglider and I've been flying and I was heading down the steps to get a taxi to ride 40 minutes all the way around down to the bottom of the mountain to go and see my sweetheart here in Medellin. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could fly down these steps? And then I thought, wait a minute, you've got a fucking paraglider on your back. So I went back up the steps. I took off from the top of the mountain and I landed a mile from her house.
Is that as
And
close? Is that as close as you could get, or because of
that's as
Parkland?
close as I could get and live.
Now, Medellin is a pretty built up. It's in the mountains, first of all. For those who haven't been there, it's really like a valley between a big sets of mountains. But there
Yeah.
are also a lot of high rises there. So, since we're talking about fear, how'd you feel about that? How did you avoid the high rises?
Actually, to be honest, I have a lot of fear when I fly, and particularly at this site, the landing zone down the bottom, they don't recommend. They recommend you land back up on top because it's as big as a postage stamp.
Jeez.
And it is near some high rises, and it's kind of on the top of a hill, and if you can land right on top of it, you're good. But if you don't, you're going to end up in bushes. You could be landing against with the wind, which is bad. And
Right.
I swear to God, there's a fucking ditch right next to the landing zone. So as you're approaching it, you have to get just over the ditch and on top of the hill, or land before the ditch. And it scares me every single time. I actually crashed on the weekend. I'm safe, but I landed so hard I didn't even try and stick the landing. I just hit and rolled. Yeah, so I have fear every time I fly, and with good reason, but I learn every time I fly as well.
Sure. Wouldn't it be cool if you could land on her balcony apartment? You know, her apartment balcony.
Yeah. In Nepal, last March we were flying, and some of the guys, I was wiped out from flying all day, but some of the guys went back up the top of the mountain, flew across the lake, and landed at our hotel. They landed in the park right in front of the hotel. I filmed the whole thing. It was awesome.
It would be most romantic thing you can do. Is like crash in through someone's, balcony door, right through the glass, right. It's you really were good. You could just land right in her living room.
Yeah, yeah, I'll work up to it.
So, so David and Dave, we met about 3 months ago, I guess it was, when I was
Yep.
bumping through. I shouldn't say bumping through Colombia because it has different meaning, but bouncing through Colombia,
Well, your private life is yours.
and we had so many mutual friends. It was destined that we meet,
Yeah,
and we had a great dinner and follow up pretty much all day. We agreed to meet for lunch and ended up sitting for probably 5 6 hours,
yeah.
just trading
Yeah.
ideas and talking and thinking and
Your little coaching roundtable.
coaching roundtable. It's just wonderful. And it was such a great experience, kind of diving in deep with someone I just met who was just so easy to talk to. And I was really struck by your journey. You're a very open person um, about your experiences and how you've dealt with fear, how you have overcome fear, and now how you coach entrepreneurs to get through fear.
Yeah,
So I definitely wanted to get some of your wisdom out here into the world.
great.
Let's take some steps back. You did not grow up being like Mr. Fearless Biff, football captain, jumping off mountains, sumo wrestling in Japan, just doing whatever you wanted to. You weren't born this way, were you?
You just made that stuff up, by the way. That's not in my resume. I just want
Well,
people to know. I
well,
didn't.
I was actually went a little Tim Ferriss here, just like thinking of
Yeah,
people who just do crazy shit. You
yeah.
weren't.
You confused me with somebody else.
I just merged you,
Yeah.
but you weren't
No, I
born
didn't.
fearless. Yeah.
I didn't start this way. And also, I want to make the point: I am not fearless. I do not promote fearlessness. I think if you're fearless, you're probably an idiot. I'm more about making friends with fear and using it. So I have a lot of fear, and I've learned how to find it and name it and lean into it so that it doesn't run me. Um, but no, I didn't start this way. I started as an Australian in a country town, and I was pretty shut down from my emotions. I didn't know much. I didn't know what emotional intelligence was.
Yeah.
Most Australians don't. And I started doing business consulting for Fortune 50 companies in New York. I was a consulting actuary, and I just thought there must be more to life. So I decided to go and do some personal development courses, and I realized, holy shit, I can like communicate with people, and I can open my heart, and I can start to feel, and it's possible to succeed in business and to really grow self-aware as a person and keep pushing back your boundaries. So I love that sweet spot where you can be a business person who's rocking it out, and you can have your heart open, be fully connected, and be enjoying your life in all facets.
Like, I'm guessing the term fully connected wasn't, I guess, used that much in the Australian outback.
No.
It's not a virtue.
No, it wasn't. In fact, I was really happy when I got to university because you could have long hair if you wanted to, and people didn't call you out for fights out the front of the pub on a Friday night.
Is that what that's?
Yeah, it was a big change to go from my country town where you couldn't be different at all to no one really cares.
Right. And that sort of opened you up. How did you get into fear as a subject, as a coaching subject, particularly for entrepreneurs?
Well, I've been coaching entrepreneurs for 20 years, but recently when I started looking at what do I care about?
Yeah.
What do I geek out about? What am I most passionate about? I realized that I've lived my whole life from a place of courage. My psychiatrist called me counterphobic.
Counterphobic?
Yeah, and I'd never heard of it, but I thought, wow, that sounds right. Like, I'm afraid of heights.
Right.
And I paraglide.
I'm afraid of widths. No, I'm just kidding. So what counterphobic sounds like? It means you're an idiot. It means you're doing everything that scares you.
Yeah.
Like, almost sounds self-destructive when you say that.
Well, it can be. It can be. So I've had to find out how to lean into my fears in a healthy way and where not to do it because it is destructive. For example, I'm afraid of abandonment. That's one of my issues due to childhood stuff. When I get with a partner, I'm worried she's going to go. So I found that I was leaning into open relationships and dating a woman who's dating other guys. And I tell you, there's value in it so that you can look at where your fears are and keep your heart open and not let fear run you. But for me, that was going too far because my body doesn't deal with it well. My whole nervous system's just
What does that mean? What does it mean? What do you mean your body doesn't deal with it?
Well, I go into anxiety and depression. If I'm totally triggered, my nervous system is constantly triggered. So this brings up a valuable point. You want to lean into your fears in a healthy way and you want to not let them run you, but you also have to have respect for what's too far. And you've got to know when you're being the spiritual warrior and when that's healthy and when it's time to just take care of yourself and dial it back to a point that's more manageable.
Whoa. Well, you raised a lot of questions there because like as you were talking, I picture myself sort of with a bungee attached to my feet, standing on the platform, my body's saying, don't do this. So right. How do you know when to listen to your body? I mean, when you coach.
Yeah, I think your body will tell you when it's too much. So, there's got to be so many entrepreneurs listening to this right now who are overloaded. They're just overloaded. They're overwhelmed. They've got high levels of stress. They're getting a lot done, but they've got so many moving parts. It's not good for the body, and they know it because they're probably not sleeping that well. Their energy's probably not that good. They know they don't have work-life balance. They'd like more time with the family or to have a family.
Mm-hmm.
And so for those people, it's time to dial it back to a more manageable, I call it the challenge zone, where you're challenged in a healthy way, but you're not in the overwhelm zone.
You find that a lot.
Yeah, I found it for myself. It's like, whoa, this is too much. I'm taking on too much. I'm going to drop that project. I'm going to focus on less. Or I'm going to stop dating this woman because I don't feel nourished in the relationship. Sure, I'm leaning into my fears and I'm growing, but I want to take care of my body now. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to find a relationship that's more nurturing.
That's really a good one. That's a great one. You got me thinking. I once dated a woman who was a wonderful woman, but she had a lot of anger toward men, father stuff, and so tended to be really controlling. And so while it was nourishing on many levels, she was great. It got to a point where I would bring up this question of control, and she wasn't able to sort of get a grip on it, and I had to stop that relationship. So even though there was a lot of good, I like that word, nourishing. It was bringing me down, it just felt constricting.
Yeah. So I've identified 3 different zones. There's the boredom zone, where you really need a bigger game and you're not pushing your edge. You're not making those phone calls to make those sales. You're not making those phone calls to get on stage. You're not calling that person who you're in awe of and could be an amazing alliance partner because you're scared. So the people in that zone, let's find your fears, let's name them, and let's lean into those so you can be playing a bigger game and get into the challenge zone.
There's the second zone. Before we jump to the second zone, how do you identify what the fears are, like the productive, useful fears, and the ones that may not be? Like, you don't want to lean into all your fears.
No.
You want to lean into
well, firstly, let's talk about the word fear, because not everyone identifies as having fear.
Okay.
Right? There are entrepreneurs out there who would say, I'm not afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that. I lived my life like that for a long time. Like, I'm not really afraid of anything. I'm a confident guy. So for some people, they know they're terrified of some things. They might know they're terrified of public speaking or jumping off a mountain. They know that. For other people, it doesn't occur like that. It's just, okay, I'm afraid of certain things. I'm afraid of telling my wife everything that she doesn't know because she might leave me. Right? They might realize that they're afraid of that.
Right.
Or I'm afraid to tell my boss this. They might own up that they're afraid of that. For other people, they don't identify as having fear. For them, it might be nervousness. Okay, I get nervous telling the truth to my boss, or I get nervous running the team meeting at work.
Just like a guy thing. Guys don't want to use the word fear. Is that what you're kind of leaning toward?
I can't tell you if it's guy or if it's everybody, but I just know for me, for years, I didn't relate to having fear. I had plenty of fears, but I just didn't say it. Maybe because I was raised in Australia.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Right?
Australians don't have fear. You call it fear?
Yeah, but I'm a neurotic guy. I got lots of fears. I've just learned to name them and learned to live with them and which ones to lean into. Now, the 4th level,
we haven't done the second level. The second level is challenge.
Well, yeah, those are the 3 zones. But I was saying people who relate to fear, some may know it as terror. Some know it as fear. Some just say, okay, I'm nervous about certain things. And for other people, it might just be hesitation. Okay, I hesitate to do those things, or I notice I've been avoiding those things. So whichever word you relate to, those are the words that I call different forms of, there's some kind of fear. I'm afraid I'm going to lose something in some way if I do this action.
Right, and so there's something to be gained that you're just holding back from.
Yeah. Now, so, we talked about, the 4 different levels of fear. There are the 3 zones you can be in. We should probably also talk about what's the point, because you've asked a good question and we'll get to it about which fears do you lean into and which fears do you not. But what's the point? What's the point of naming your fears and what's the point of leaning into them? Then we can work out which ones to lean into. And I say there are 2 really good reasons to lean into fear. One is our comfort zone gets bigger every time we do that. So, we've got our things we're comfortable with. There's things that are uncomfortable. Every time we lean into fear, our comfort zone gets bigger. I like the analogy of there's a monster under my bed. Well, if you think there's a monster under your bed, I'd rather get a flashlight and take a look and actually see if there's a monster under the bed rather than living with that fear for the next 10 years. If that monster is going to kill me now. I want to get it over with. If there's no monster, I'm going to sleep better. If there is a monster, let's have a conversation.
Right. Good information to have.
Yeah. So the first, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I have questions, but go ahead. You're on a good roll here.
Okay. So the first real benefit of naming the fears and leaning into them is your comfort zone gets bigger and you grow and you have more freedom. So I just think as a personal growth thing, if you're afraid of doing improv, go and do improv. Like, go and try it out. Unless you're going to break out in sweats and have total panic attacks, go and try it out and see what there is to learn from it. That's how I live.
Yeah, it's really funny. We just started a stand-up comedy class here in LA.
Right. That's one of the scariest things that you
They
can
say
do.
it's interesting. I don't know if at this point in my life it's scary. I'm just not attached deeply to audience response. It hurts, but it's not really scary. But it's amazing the fear people experience. Like when they get up
Yeah.
there, you can see they just start sweating. They're petrified,
Yeah.
as if it's like the Roman Colosseum and people are going to stone them or release lions on them if they can't get a laugh.
Yeah.
I just feel like a stupid dork.
And I've done 20 stand-up gigs. I've done some professional clubs.
Beautiful.
And it's one of the scariest things that I've done is to stand up there and people there with their arms folded. Yeah, make me laugh funny, man.
Exactly.
It's a bitch.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons we're doing it, by the way. Just to experience that and see what it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. And so as you do it, you may learn, okay, I'm attached to what people think. How can I relax into this and just do it for me, for example? And boom, now you've grown, now you've learned, now you can get up on stage with people. I mean, that in itself is worthwhile. But there's a second reason to lean into fear, and it's because doing the scary work pays well.
Ah, that's great. I've never heard it said that way.
Yeah, well, I give credit to Alex Mondosian.
Good old Alex. Just talking to him yesterday. We love Alex.
Marketing genius.
Yes.
And he asked the question, why does scary work pay well? And the answer I came up with, and fortunately he had the same answer, was because not many people are doing it.
Or want to, yeah.
The scary stuff people don't do. So making those phone calls, like when I wanted someone to write the foreword to my book, it was scary to me to approach Richard Branson. It was scary to me to walk up to him standing outside a room about to go into speak, surrounded by his minders, and walk up and pitch. Like,
and what happened?
Scary as fuck.
What happened?
He agreed that I could send the pitch through his assistant. So I did, and apparently I'm told it got in front of him and he turned it down.
Okay. Interesting, but you did it, which is great.
Right. And then the next person in line, and I told him this up front, was Jack Canfield of Chicken Soup. And I said to him, look, I'll be honest, I'm going for Richard Branson, and if he says no, I'd be honored if you would write my forward. And
You'd
he
be
said,
second best. I'd be honored.
Yeah. And he said, well, you're going alphabetically. I understand that.
He's a great guy.
I know, right?
Yeah, he's a great guy.
And that was scary to ask Jack. And so the scary work does pay well because most people aren't doing it. They're not going to. I reached out to Steve Wynn from the Wynn Hotels in Vegas. Like, I was going for it, and most people don't do it. And if you're willing to really play at that level, eventually someone's going to say yes.
He could use some good press right now. He's having a bit of trouble with the ladies at his casino. Actually, he just stepped down as CEO. It's great. It's a great question. Like, what listeners, like everyone listening, what's something you would love to do to move yourself forward in life, whether it's business, entrepreneurship, relationships, family, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, multiple incarnations of those. What's one thing you'd really like to do, but you're holding back?
Yeah.
Great question. Just take one leap.
Yeah. So what I recommend is take inventory. And if you come up with one thing, then you're winning. But take inventory. Write it down, and then you can tear it up so no one sees it. But what would your life be like if you did live without fear? What would you say to your partner that you haven't said yet? What would you say to your boss if you could say anything? What would you share with the people that you're holding something against, people you haven't forgiven yet? What would you do in your business? What phone calls would you make tomorrow if you were fearless? And you don't have to be. But that's a great place to start. And then maybe circle one of those and see if you're actually willing to do it. Now you got to take a risk. Like I got to give some disclaimers here. If you go and tell your partner something that they're not going to like hearing,
right?
You got to be willing to consequences, which might be losing that partner.
Right. Well, it's better.
You got to be willing. But do it. Well, you do it for the benefit, and the benefit, as I said, is you grow. And if your partner accepts you and decides to stay with you, now you're closer. And I can't. There's no other relationship I want to be in.
Right. Without
than
truth.
one where everything's on the table. And if you decide not to stay with each other when everything's on the table, then that's what should happen. You should break up.
It's what should happen, right? It's
Yeah.
you used the word comfort before. I always say comfort zone. I got this from a teacher named Guy Finley. I don't know if you know Guy. He's a great teacher of men. And he once said, I interviewed him years ago. I think we were talking about Rumi. I think he wrote about Rumi. And I asked him, I said, I used the term comfort zone. And he said, the funny thing about comfort zones is that they're often not very comfortable for people. He goes, they're just familiar zones. That people call it. So every time I hear the word comfort zone, I always replace that with, it's just your familiar zone. Because chances are your comfort zone is full of anxiety because you're not actually fucking doing what you want to be doing. You're just holding back in what's familiar. So that's a huge reframe that I always kind of share with people from Guy. That to check in on that comfort zone notion, it's actually an anxious, small, constricted zone.
That's a great way to frame it.
Is that a nice reframe? I love that.
And let's come back to your question. Your question, original question was, how do you know which ones to lean into? Well, once you've taken inventory, and it could be just a piece of paper, or you write down what you would do if you were fearless, write down next to each of those things what the benefits would be.
Right.
So what's the benefit of sharing a secret that you've been holding on to? Write down the benefit. What's the benefit of calling that person to see if they want to buy your product, or to see if you can get on that stage, or if you can get that alliance partner or get that sponsor for your product? What's the benefit? And if you can see a benefit, and I think there's a benefit to doing almost everything that's scary. Personally, that's how I live. I think there's a benefit to doing everything. Then go do it, as long as you're willing to accept the risk. I mean, the risk usually with most phone calls is that people say no.
That's it. I mean, just to start creating some distinctions, facing your fear, as long as you have positive intent and the benefit outweighs the cost, go for it.
Positive intent is so valuable.
That's
if you
right.
don't have positive intent, you're going to be scared about even having the conversation, even more so because in your subconscious, when you write an email to somebody and you put something angry in it, and then they respond back and you see the subject and you're about to open it, there's nervousness because you know that you weren't that nice to them.
Right.
But if you sent an email of total love and you just, had no againstness and no judgment and no criticism, and they've written back, I know I'm in a different place. I'm like, you bring whatever you got because I'm clean.
Right. Right.
So
there's
positive intent.
I'm reminded, by contrast, people say like, well, honesty is really important, but positive intent honesty. Like, for example, I once worked with somebody who was very smart and very manipulative. And he used to do things like he'd say to people, including me, he would say, hey, I'm just being honest here, right? And just being honest, which is fine, sounds good, but he would speak truths to manipulate people,
right,
to his will, not to be in service of that person necessarily. I don't think he made that distinction. So we can be honest and face our fears and have negative intent to actually hurt someone, to bring them down a notch, to build up our own power, or to try to form them into the shape that we want them to be, which is not what we're talking about, leaning into fear.
Yeah.
Let's talk about entrepreneurs for a second, because, entrepreneurship sounds great when you first get into it. Freedom, right? In control of your life, build wealth. And you can do all that, but you're going to fucking fall flat on your face several times.
Yeah.
Pretty much everyone I know, with very few exceptions, people have, burst upwards into hundreds of thousands, even millions, and then, bankruptcy, or back down to zero, and then burst again up, and there's what's called the entrepreneurial roller coaster. What are some of the positive practices? Let's just talk about some of the fears you're facing most with entrepreneurs. What are the biggest fears that entrepreneurs face once they're in the game?
Sure. Well, one fear is, am I gonna fail?
Mm-hmm.
Am I gonna fail?
That's easy. Yes. From time to time, you're gonna fail.
Yeah. As a coach, sometimes my clients, they say, well, I'm really scared this might happen. And I see it as my job often to say, well, it might.
Mm-hmm.
So let's deal with that it might. If that happens, what's next?
Right.
So definitely one of the big deals is I might fail. This business may not work. I may not make enough money. I may have to fold it. I had one client, he was so worried about being embarrassed by his friends, because our identity becomes, I'm an entrepreneur and this is what I'm doing. And what's it say about me if I suck at it?
Right. I've been there. You know, there was a time when my main business was sort of dating, relationship coaching, and I fucked up a relationship big time. And I had a huge fear. I felt awful. I had a huge fear that, you know, what the public judgment would be, you know, someone who's supposed to know better, but we're all learning all the time. It was a good lesson to learn, by the way, David, that, you know, people aren't as judgmental as you maybe expect them to be. You know, even when my kids were small, I used to say that, you know, when they started getting socially concerned, what people would think of them. And I told them, most people aren't thinking about you. You know, they're really thinking about themselves.
That's right.
And I kind of learned that lesson myself as an adult when I realized that most people are pretty fucking forgiving, especially those who are sort of on the path of, you know, self-growth, self-development, learning. We all realize that we make mistakes, and then we do our best to, you know, get up, dust off, whether it's personal relationships or business, and plow forward.
And that lesson that you got is a prime example of the kind of gold that's available when we lean into our fears. If you didn't lean into your fear about what people would think, you wouldn't have come up with that realization and realize, wow, people are kinder than I thought.
Yeah.
That's just one example of the myriad of benefits. When we start leaning into the scary stuff, we find out, hang on, this isn't as scary as I thought. Almost everything. Unless you're physically threatened by danger, like you are 10,000 feet above sea level, with a piece of canvas, most things really are just imagined monsters under the bed.
Even stand-up comedy.
Yeah, exactly. Even stand-up comedy. Like, what a great exercise to get up in front of a bunch of people and bomb and have them be bored, and then walk off stage and realize that you are intact. You still have your house. You still have your family. Maybe people don't think you're as cool as they did before, but life goes on.
Yeah, it's like kind of the equivalent of what Tony Robbins does with firewalking, for example. You know, walking across whatever he does, hot coals or whatever it is.
Yeah, I've done that with him.
Yeah. It just shows you that your fear is largely in your head. What are some of the other fears that you've come across?
Well, another one is hearing no. You know, the idea of rejection. And again, it's made up. Like, if I walk up to a beautiful woman in a bar and I say, hey, can I chat with you for a few minutes, have a drink with you? I'm terrified, generally, that that she's going to say no. I'm going to make that mean something about myself. And worse, the 15, 20 people in the bar who watch me walk up to this woman who they've had their eye on for the past half hour are going to see how I do and watch me walk away. Now, realistically, what changes about my life? Nothing, except that I have some pride that I push back a barrier because I feel better about myself, that I express myself.
Right. 15 strangers think a little bit less of you.
Yeah.
You know, I used to teach when I was teaching dating for guys who really wanted to meet girls in bars and stuff like that. I have a little technique, by the way. Want to hear it?
Yeah.
So, and it works. So if you're in a bar situation and you see a guy walk up to a girl, I was in London when I came up with this because I was sitting with a client and we were watching these guys approach the girls at the next table, and they did a terrible job. And as they walked away, you just go over to the girl and you say, so I give that guy about a 4 out of 10. What did you rate him? Right. So you're immediately now on her side, right? You're watchers of human behavior and of other guys. You're kind of safe. And now you're into a conversation, and women love playing with you too. See, I give him a 4.5. My friend gave him a 4.3. What did you rate him on? You know, what did you rate him? And then you're into a conversation.
That's really good. Yeah. I might use that here in Colombia.
Yeah. Drawing up my old material from when I was dating coaching. Okay. So fear of rejection, which doesn't even exist in my worldview. You know, unless it's a bank. That's a real rejection, right? When you go in for a loan.
Yeah. The third one I think is losing, for me personally, it's that I might lose friendships and relationships. Yeah. So if people see me as a failure, see, when my business is going really well and I've got a really big emailing list, a lot of people want to know me at conferences. They want to do favors for me. You know, it's really great to have that kind of clout.
Hmm.
And I'm afraid if I start something new, what if it doesn't work? And worse, what if people see it to fail, and
Right.
then they're just not interested in being my friend because I'm not worth knowing, right? Deep subconscious fear. And also, if I'm calling my friends and calling my community and telling them about my business and seeing if there's a way maybe I can help them, maybe they can help me, I have a fear. What if they think I'm pushy? What if they tell me, dude, you're just like over the top, and I'm totally turned off by what you're doing here. And that's one of my fears in reaching out about business.
So like a real business hit if you're perceived as a failure.
Yeah, being perceived as a failure and being perceived as pushy. What if you do call John Gray, is an example of a famous author. What if you do call his office every second day 30 times, right? What
Definitely.
happens is, are you going to like burn that relationship? Is he going to say nasty things about you in the community? I mean, these are some of the things that go through my head as I'm reaching out and putting myself out there.
Well, I wouldn't call him every 2 days. I don't know if that's a good idea.
An
But
example,
okay, no, it's
an
interesting.
example.
But you raise an interesting question. Like, if this is for the entrepreneurs out there, how you're perceived in terms of your success or failure. I have found, because I think it's my nature, um, to maintain generousness throughout as a steady, just as a policy. How can I help? When you're down, when you're up and you're helpful, fantastic. People feel great. When you're down, they still remember that you were helpful. So even if you're not pulling in money, they still relate to you through your character, through who you
Right.
are as a person, which for most people I know in the entrepreneurial world counts for a lot.
Which comes back to what you said about positive intent.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
does help me. It helps me so much when I make those calls. If I'm leading with the giving hand instead of the taking hand, it helps me a lot to have some peace that I'm offering to see if I can help today. And if you're not interested in that help, okay, I bet there's someone else who could use help right now.
Yeah. It's really good. You got me thinking about a bunch of different things. Someone reached out to me today who wants to join one of my coaching programs, and he just gone through a divorce. And I love the guy. He went through one of my programs. He did great. He's advancing in his business. It's a business training program. And he said, God, I really want to be part of this other program, but I feel like it's insulting to ask you for it. And I admired him. He said, is there anything we could do? Do you need an apprentice, some volunteer work? How can we do this? And I
Yeah.
basically said, look, dude, I trust you like a brother. I know who you are. So I know you're going through a hard time. I know you'll come out of it. So, let's get going, and we'll figure out payments later. Just because I like him and I believe in him and I admired him for asking.
Yeah.
Right? He had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Exactly.
nothing to lose. So
So
what's one thing? What's one thing I'm sorry. What's one thing you want that you're still afraid of that you're not going for? I'm just curious, and then I'll fess up mine. I have to think.
hmm. Well, there's a celebrity. There's a celebrity that's been really edgy for me to reach out to, and I'm not doing it every second day, but I have been persistent over the last year or so. So I feel like I've been doing that. I mean, I work with a coach myself, so let me see if there's something that I haven't done yet that I'm scared to do. I think I've got a long list of people to call, and I'm often no, I'm pretty much nervous each day. I'm nervous each day about reaching out to them. Some of them I haven't spoken to for 5 or 6 years,
Yep.
and I'm reaching out to get on the phone, see how I can help them. There might be a way they can help me as well. I'm building relationships, and I'm nervous. So I got a list of people. So there's maybe 50 reasons to be a little nervous that they might go, and some of them don't respond at all. They're just too busy to get on the phone. They're not interested in having a phone call. So
Right.
that feels a little bit like, a little bit like rejection. Like,
Sure.
okay, this person doesn't want to talk to me. All right, doesn't kill me. But there's no one on that list that I've been like, this is a whale. This is someone I really need to talk to, and I haven't been doing yet. So I can't think of anything, because with my coach and with the reflection I'm doing each day, I might put things off for a week or two, but then I'm like, all right, dude, make that call, send that video, reach out to that person.
Yeah, I want to underline that you're a coach and you have a coach. A lot of people don't realize this, but most high performers have coaches to kick our asses a bit down
Yeah.
the road, because everyone is great at creating excuses, right?
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
not.
Well, there's two camps I've identified. There's the camp, and I was in this for a long time, saying I'm better at doing things than everybody else. So what would I need a coach for? You know, I'm rocking it.
Right.
And then I'll only get a coach if I'm broken. And even then I may not get a coach because I don't want to admit that I'm broken. Right. Then there's the other camp. I just watched a video of Bill Gates
Mm-hmm.
and someone else saying, yeah, I got coaches for 4 or 5 different things in my life. The top performers have a coach. So there's 2 different camps and everyone gets to decide which camp they're in. For me, it's kind of a no-brainer. My coach only has to come up with one idea, or in the space of the coaching call, I come up with an idea that I wouldn't have without that call,
Right.
to pay for themselves.
Yeah, that's great. A great coach will get you to think beyond your familiar comfort zone and to think really big.
Yeah. Have conversations, see, most people aren't going to sit with you and talk with you for 30, 40, 50 minutes about your life and your business dedicated
Right.
and focus 100% on you. And most friends aren't going to do that weekly.
No, of course
Right?
not. Or certainly not your vision, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Because they've got their life as well and you want to go back and forth. So the one-way attention seems to do something.
yeah, it allows you to break out. It allows you to think possibilities. So like, when you're dealing with clients, I'm curious, it's one thing to say, well, just go fucking do it. Make the phone call. That's an easy one. But how else do you deal with people's fears? Where's that
Right.
middle ground between not doing something someone wants to do and actually doing it that's not just go fucking do it?
Yeah. All right. Well, here's an example. A client today, he's got a clothing line and he wants to expand the line. And he was honest with me. He said, I got a lot of doubt and it feels overwhelming. And that's what he said. He didn't say I feel fear, but that's what he was feeling. It's like, this is a lot. And he didn't know how the cash flow was going to work or if he had enough cash flow to do it. So what we identified is he needs to break it down because there's too many steps. So he broke it down so that he's going to first work out what the cost will be of expanding the line, what his cash flow needs are going to be, see if he can get a loan. And then I said, you're going to have doubt while all this happens and it's going to feel uncomfortable. But once you have all those pieces, your doubt and fear are going to reduce.
Yeah.
And I had the same thing with paragliding. I was reluctant to go fly here in Colombia because there were like 10 things that had to happen first and I hadn't chunked it down. So once you chunk it down, you do all the steps like get all my equipment ready, get that machine ready, train up on that, find out where the landing zone is, work out my transport. Now that that's all lined up, I'm excited to go and fly.
Right. Yeah. Landing zone one sounds especially important to me.
Yeah. You want to know where you're coming down.
Yeah. No, this is by the way, it's a glider without an engine, right? It's just you.
Yeah. It's like a parachute, just modified to glide further than a parachute.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
The winds must be gnarly down there because the mountains are high.
No, they're pretty good. We're in a valley and you don't get strong winds, so you really just get thermals. You get updrafts, and because it's winter, they're not that strong right now. So it's not flying Nepal. That was like flying in a washing machine. That was scary as fuck. I had 3 50% collapses of my chute in Nepal. It sounds scarier than it is. It's designed to handle that, but it's like gnarly. Here it's not. So that's one way, is chunking down the items. And then another thing I do with people, I love the fear setting exercise. You'd write down, because the first step is working out what it is you're afraid of. Like, what's going to happen if you do that? And then work out, okay, if that happened, what's your backup plan?
Right.
What are you going to do if you fail at that or if you get a no at that? If there's any damage done, how can you mitigate the damage, minimize it, or how can you repair it once the damage is done? Like, we really shine the flashlight on that monster under the bed and see what does it really look like. And often it's not that scary once you've worked it out, or you've worked out what your game plan is going to be if it happens. So it's not that big a deal.
Right. So fear, when you're dealing with fear, it really sounds like what fear really is. It's just the constructions of your brain, kind of like barnacles around the reality. The barnacles have nothing to do with reality.
Yeah, and I'm not a psychologist, but I know there's psychology related to some of this stuff. Like, going back to caveman time, you
Mhm.
had to fit in.
Yeah.
If you didn't fit in with your tribe, you would die.
Yes. And it's amazing how actually recent that has gone. I was reading a book about Shakespeare and his time. Stephen Greenblatt's book. I think it's called Shakespeare in His Time, and he's kind of putting together the life of Shakespeare. And something I didn't know is that by nightfall, you had to be in your village, and if you were a stranger in another village, it was dangerous. You were seen as hostile, right?
Yep.
So just being out of your village, so there was like a race to get to a village at night and be known, right? And
Yeah.
so we go back to caveman times. This is what 1600, 1610, and how dangerous it was simply to be out of your village. So
Yeah.
we forget that that's over 300 years ago, 400 years ago.
Right. And if you did the wrong thing with your mother and father, with most parents, you were on the out. The
Right.
way most parents handle things is to withdraw love. If
Yeah.
you're in trouble, that's the way you get punished. So we've just learned we want to keep on people's good side. We want approval, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well,
But we
safety.
want to notice it, see
Yeah.
it, so that it doesn't run us and go, boy, I really want people to approve of me for this, and I'm willing to make this phone call and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because, beyond all the tactical stuff of being a successful entrepreneur, one of the things that's really fascinated me in the last few years has been to really unpack the childhood strategies of that we create when we're very, very small, and we wire our brains to try to fit in and feel safe and approved of, which is a totally natural thing to do.
Yeah.
And then we spend the rest of our lives, if we're consciously aware and if we want to grow and if we want to,
Right.
you start untangling those really early childhood things like, this is how I'm funny, this is how I'm agreeable, this is how I'm pleasing. And every family constellation is different, but we all have them. Everybody has them.
Yep.
If you want to really attain your power and what I call being at choice, like really living at choice, right? Fuck normal. Like the normalcy that we create when we're really young, it's just a strategy, and the person we've become is just a series of strategies. That's
Yep.
become our normal. Those strategies get you somewhere, but they don't get you where you most want to go.
Right.
Yeah.
So I, initially I was all about business and money, and then I found personal growth, and I was like,
Mhm.
wow, I really want to be free. I want to be expressed. I want to be loving. I want to be authentic. I
Mhm.
want to be honest. I want to
Mhm.
be inspiring. I want to be inspiring to people. I want to be a leader. So I went and did that for 20 years. And then, of course, you find out that that's the best way to grow your business,
Yep.
to grow yourself.
Yep.
You attract better people. You attract
Yes.
better alliances. More
Yes.
people want to be around you. More people want to follow you. More people will let you speak on their stage.
Yeah. People want to be around you if you're authentic and free. If you're obviously running strategies, you'll get to a certain level, but once you reach a certain level, people, they can feel. It's just you're just running strategies on them.
Exactly. And here's the tie-in between, I'm glad we're talking about authenticity now, because
Yeah.
that's my other passion. Courage and authenticity are my two passions. And it takes a lot of courage to be authentic.
Yeah.
That's where they come together.
Until it isn't. Because once you've got it, once you really are live authentically to who, well, there's two kinds of authenticity in my experience. There's being authentic to your deepest values where you don't waver. That's rock solid, right?
Yeah.
That's not hard. Once you've just made that sort of decision that that's how you're going to live, hopefully you've been raised that way.
I challenge that,
Yeah.
because sometimes to be authentic, you risk loss.
Yes.
So to be authentic and tell the truth, you might go to prison.
Yeah. But
You
at some
might-
point, that's exactly the point. At some point, the person's absolutely willing to go to prison for their beliefs.
Right. And I've been there.
Yeah. Have you?
I've been there. I've risked prison to apologize to someone. There was a chance I could have
It
been.
sounds like a good story. What do you got?
Yeah. Well, some of the details are private, but I
Okay.
did something when I was younger that I regret and I wish I could take back.
Right.
And I've been prosecuted for it and gone to prison. And I confessed. I went to the person, I tracked them down, confessed, and said, "This is what I did, and I apologize." And I was risking prison to do that. And that was the scariest conversation of my life, because prison's one of my biggest fears.
Yep. Why
And,
did you do it? What was guiding you to find that person and confess?
Well, it stayed with me for years. For like 20 years, it was like my biggest secret. And it was tearing away at me because I've been getting more expressed in every area of my life.
Yeah.
And I told my partner, and I told my friends, and now I'm willing to, tell people about it. But I was worried, it was hanging over my head. If this ever came out, I'd go to prison, and I don't want anything hanging. I've got nothing hanging as far as I know. I've cleaned up everything in my life. There's nothing coming back to bite me like in the soap operas.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to, and the thing that gave me the access to doing it was I realized that I was truly sorry. And I needed to let this person know that this isn't who I am, and I'm truly sorry. And if prison is a consequence of apologizing, I'm actually willing to risk it for my own personal freedom and self-expression.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there's. I was just rereading Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Right.
It's such a rich. We think of it as a horror. I grew up. It was one. I think it was one of those Universal movies like Frankenstein, Dracula, and I always just thought of it as just another, scary horror movie character. But it's really, that's the shadow you carry along with you. You carry Mr. Hyde with you, until you don't. Until you unburden yourself of this dark shadow that you're carrying, this sort of monster within you that eats at you inside. That's the value of speaking. Jordan Peterson has this great quote that speaking truth is curative.
Yeah. So people like you and I, it's like there's a club. Hang on, that's my alarm for my next coaching call.
Oh, I thought there was an invasion there in Medellin.
I said it like that so that I definitely don't miss it.
I don't think you will.
Right. People like you and I who have spent years and years and, I probably over $100,000 on our personal growth, we should get jackets because we've gone deeply into it and we know that they're an incredible benefits. I want to speak to the entrepreneurs out there who have done enough to know that that's a path they want to tread, and they want to bring that into their way of working and their way of business and their way of life, and to be able to guide them as they go along that path. They may not want to dive as deeply into it as you and I have, but they know that that's a direction they want to go.
Beautiful. David Wood, fear coach to entrepreneurs. How do people find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah. And I wanted to say too that fear coaching and looking at your fears is kind of a process, but it's not the end result that we're going for. The end result we're going for is freedom. And in your business, of course, we're going to double your profits, your productivity, and your peace. And you're the one who came up with 3P2X, which I really love.
You're welcome. That was a good discussion.
That's the end result for entrepreneurs: profits, productivity, and peace. And how they can get a hold of me, I'm happy to do a strategy session with anybody who meets a strict but fair set of criteria. If they do, I'll get on the phone with you and I'll create a plan with you. If you want to implement it on your own, go do it. If you want my help to do it, then we can talk about working together. And the link is solutionbox.com/life.
So they find you at solutionbox.com. That's your company?
Yep. Solutionbox.com/life.
Great. Folks, if you want to fake your fears. If you want to fake your fears,
fake them
somewhere else. But if you want to face your fears and achieve prosperity, productivity, and peace, David Wood, your man, solutionbox.com. David, thank you so much, man. Stay safe flying over the hills there in Colombia.
I will. My pleasure, Adam. Thanks, brother.
I'm sure I'll see you somewhere soon. Bye, man.
Ciao.